when I did come out to my parents when I was at university, and my mother said, well, of course, dear. I don't think there'd been a time when she wasn't aware of it. I don't know why mothers know these things. But it wasn't easy in the early 70s, for all that I could, you know, be witty, and for all that this discovery of Oscar Wilde and then of his life gave me a hero. He was a doomed hero. He was a tragic hero. And all the heroes there were for me to follow were literary ones. So in a sense I have that, my sexuality, to thank for the fact that that too turned me to reading, because I was desperate. Once I'd read Wilde's biography, you'd learn to look at a bibliography and an index and just chase up every other name. You know, there was, you know, Reggie Turner and Robbie Ross, and then there were other generations, Ian Forster, people like that, Robin Morm, had written autobiographies, transgressive people who lived lives of sin and in constant danger of being exposed. But they were so often brilliant and creative and remarkable. So they gave me this secret self, and maybe the stealing, maybe, I'm not excusing it, and maybe the stealing and the climbing the roof of the church, you know, the chapel roof, and looking down on the school while everyone else was at their rugby and everything, was the thing I liked to do.
Returning to your life, and we were talking about the early 70s, now the early 80s. You were, as you've explained, at Cambridge. You explained why Hugh Laurie went into comedy. It isn't actually obvious why you chose comedy. Why did you?
I'll be very honest with you, I didn't really think I was particularly suited to it. I thought I might be suited to writing it. And because I'd written this play, and because I was writing with Hugh, I kind of wanted to be on stage, because I'd done a lot of acting, and I wanted to be on stage with Hugh and Emma, but I thought Hugh and Emma were just way above me in terms of comic performance, and I wasn't sure what my range was. Hugh was funny in every way. He was funny physically, he had a funny face. He could play, no, in a good way. You know, he could goggle those blue eyes and just make one laugh. He could do those rather peculiar things, like which have technical names like slow burns and double takes, you know, which are particular ways of looking and, you know, that sort of goggling thing. And I felt very self-conscious if I tried to do that. But when we started to write together, we write stuff for ourselves to perform, so it naturally fell out that the kinds of things we were writing would just fitted me like a glove. And I just grew more and more confident as we rehearsed and as we did it. And I naturally tended to take the role of the more pompous, the more bossy, the figure in charge, and Hugh, the slightly more forlorn, hopeless character. Like so many things, comedy, perhaps more straight away, is about confidence. You know, if you don't think you're going to be amusing, the audience kind of knows it somehow, and even if you're saying lines that are funny, there's a strain and a tension and an embarrassment and a sweatiness that is just agony for both parties. And everybody starts that way, usually, unless you have the good fortune to write your own material, and especially if it's fictional material. If I'd started in 10 years later, when sketch comedy was almost illegal, and had to be a stand-up, I don't know how I'd do it. I don't know how they get their courage, how they develop this relationship with an audience, and it's usually they've got gonged off, and it's difficult.
But you said earlier you were born to write, but I think, you know, all of us who've been watching you, it looks like you were born to perform. I mean, you seem so comfortable in the way, you know, it's been said of Barry Humphrey said of himself that he stands on a stage and all of a sudden he relaxes because he says to himself, alone at last.
Yes.
It's where he belongs.
I do feel that. I used to go as a child into Norwich with my parents, and my brother, who's 18 months older than me. We used to go and see the Christmas pantomime, the panto. And, you know, if it was Cinderella, there's usually the young comedian figure who comes on who's playing buttons. Anyway, at the panto, the buttons will come on and say, now, are there any boys and girls who'd like to join me up on stage? I was up there, straight away, stretching my hand so much the membrane of my underarm would split. I was just absolutely desperate. And at exactly the same time, my brother had sunk so far below the seat that he was completely invisible. We had the same parents, we had largely the same DNA, except for tiny differences, obviously. We were brothers, you know, and yet why was it that the moment I saw someone performing on a stage, that was the side I wanted to be? And my brother, like most normal, healthy people, wanted to be in the audience, thank heavens. Though maybe in the modern world of blogging and videos and uploading and user-generated content, maybe more and more people are going to get the bug to perform rather than watch.
I wonder also, is that one of Wilde's observations, that man is least himself when he talks in his own person? Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth.
Yes, I mean, it's a profound observation, and like most of Wilde's observations, it takes a great deal of thought to unpick. At first it just sounds like a clever, reversal, a chiasmus, as an orator would say, you swap it, like, so his famous epigrams are quite obvious reversals, like, work is the curse of the drinking classes, for example. And it's great because it really works, and it's funny and it makes you laugh and so on. But I do think it's true that you can express yourself best. As writers who write both types say, they tend to write fiction when they want to tell the truth. And they tend to write non-fiction when they want to tell a story. And it sounds clever, but it's absolutely true that facts get in the way of truth. Truth is something more fundamental than simple facts. And people get, sidetracked by a fact, but the truth of a thing is something much more profound and much more exciting. And fiction tells it better, and performance tells truth. So maybe we are all rather tragic figures of the natural performers, because we only really exist when we're in a space like this. When this finishes and I go off stage, I will trail forlornly in a melancholy state to my dressing room, and I will sit in a lonely fashion, and as has happened twice, what are the odds against this? I will accidentally spill the contents of a bottle of vodka down my throat, and then I'll just, be carried by the concierge of the hotel, vomiting over his shoulder, laid into bed, and wake up miserable and lonely until the clock tells me it's time to do the second one of these performances.
And you will wake up and animate.
Don't.
But they were incredibly fertile and active years for you, those years after sort of the footlights breakthrough, and you came to Australia and discovered wine and Grange Hermitage for $1 a bottle. Yes. Radio, film, writing, theatre. You, in 1995, quite famously walked off the stage. You ran to, of all places, Belgium. You considered suicide, and you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder or manic depression. What I'm so interested in is you went on and made a documentary about that, where you talked about, and other people talked about, even though you wanted to be well, even though this was crippling your life in some way, there was something about the creativity of that disorder.
Yes, I mean, bipolar disorder, I call this film The Secret Life of a Manic Depressive, and one has to be very, very straightforward about this. Manic depression, bipolar disorder is a very morbid condition. And the doctors here, they will be the first to say, this is not something to take lightly. It's something to be diagnosed. It's something, that it does cause. When I say morbid, I mean in the medical sense. It causes death, and it causes deeply unhealthy lifestyles, and deep unhappiness for the person inflicted, and really hugely for their families and those who love them. And the way I'm often, because I've made this film, asked by people who are in terrible straits of unhappiness, or they love someone who is in terrible unhappiness, they ask how to deal with it. If I could answer that, gosh, how happy that would make me. The closest I can come is to say that the mood is your own personal weather, and it's very like the weather. If you go outside and it's raining, it's not you that's made it rain. It has rained, and it is real. You can't unthink the rain. You can't say, I'll walk it off and then it'll be sunny. The weather makes up its own mind. And the two mistakes are either to deny that it's raining when it clearly is. It's raining. Let's face it. And the other thing is to say, therefore my life is over. It's raining, the sun will now never come out. That's it. Because we all know, in terms of the weather, that it can be a damn nuisance when it's raining, but that the sun will come out.